Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good evening everyone. We are from group 12. We will present about the Victorian period. There are the history of Victorian period, Victorian poetry, Victorian novels, and Victorian drama. The first, let me introduce our group. There is me, Siti Mumina, there is Nobi Megawati, and the last Pipit Wahyuni. And the material will be read by Nobi Megawati.
Let me start the presentation. The first, the history of Victorian period. The Victorian period of literature roughly coincides with the years that Queen Victoria ruled Great Britain and its empire. During this era, Britain was transformed from a predominantly rural, agricultural society into an urban, industrial one. New technologies like railroad and the steam press unite Britons both physically and intellectually. Although now the period is popularly known as a time of firm, conservative moral values, the Victorian perceived the year world as rapidly changing. The working class women and people of color were agitating for the right to vote or rule themselves. Reformers fought for safe workplace, sanitary reform, and universal education. Victorian literature reflects these various debates and cultural concerns. Victorian literature differed from that of the 18th century and Romantic period most significantly because it was not aimed at a specialist or elite audience. Rather, because the steam printing press made the production of text much cheaper and because railroad could distribute text quickly and easily. The Victorian period was a time when new genres appealed to newly mass audience. Poetry is literary work in which special intensity is given to the expression of feeling and ideas by the using of distinctive style and rhythm. In Indonesian, poetry is a form of written work which is usually an expression of the soul with quality aesthetic values and has deep meaning. Poetry in Indonesian is called poetry. When we remember Victorian literature, we might think immediately of the three volumes novel of the Brown Sisters and Charles Dickens, the extravaganza comedian of Oscar Wilde and Gibbon and Sullivan, who populate world culture to this day. In 17th century Britain, poetry was as prestigious as ever. Thanks to advance in literacy and publishing, poetry had never been read by a wider audience, from school children to Queen Victoria herself, or been more profitable commercially. Books by the most popular poet routinely sold out through several editions. Victorian poetry most distinctive qualities may stem paradoxically from its proximity to other genres and from theater, fiction, music, and art, all of them poetry competition in a fully stocked cultural marketplace. When Victorian food looks back into literary history, they uncover roles fit for dramatic reenactment in myth, Arthurian legend, and the play of William Shakespeare. And they feel up close at the inspired foot of British Romanticism. Their immediate predecessors, whose radical fervor, imaginative boundlessness they were too sorely skeptical to recreate. In the era's most heralded foothy innovation, Alfred Lord Tennyson and Robert Browning hybridism drama, fiction, and lyric into the drama monologues form. A foot impersonate a fictional or historical or guidance. Visually, Mann's foot, including the foot painter that Gabriel Rossetti and the writer design William Morris, would associate with the Raphaelite Brotherhood, whose portrait throughout the Victorians, releasing Victorian detail and eventually embellishment. Tennyson, Algernon Charles Swinburne, and Gerald Manley Hopkins wrote lyrically last poem that aspire toward music, the lighting in mesmerizing matter, such as Hopkins' invention, spoon rhythm, and virtuosic breadth of literature and rhythm. The three is Victorian novels. Although poetry and play were important in Victorian cultural life, the period is known as the Great Age of the novel. The serial form of publishing in which installments of a novel were released at regular intervals encouraged engaged audience. Victorian books are also famously long. The 19th century is considered by some to be the golden age of English literature. Especially for British novel, it was in the Victorian era that the novel became the literary genre in English. English writing from this era reflects the major transformation in most aspects of English life, from scientific, economic, and technological advance to change in class structure and the role of religion in society. Famous novelists from this period include Charles Dickens, William Thackeray, George Eliot, and Thomas Hardy. In the Victorian novels, divided into four. First, Charles Dickens is the most famous Victorian novels with a focus and strong characterization. Dickens became extraordinarily popular in his day and remains one of the most popular and read authors of the world. His first novel, The Pickwick Papers, written when he was 25, was an overnight success, and all his subsequent work sold extremely well. Second, William Thackeray. William Thackeray was Dickens' great rival in the first half of Queen Victoria's reign, with a similar style but a slightly more detached, aesthetic, and barbed satirical view of his character. He also tended to depict a more middle-class society than Dickens did. Third, George Eliot. Later in this period, George Eliot published The Mill on the Floss. It was her most famous work. Middlemarch, like the Browns, the published under a masculine. 4. Thomas Hardy. Novelist Thomas Hardy wrote in the latter decade of the Victorian era. His most notable work include Under the Greenwood Tree, Far from the Madding Crow, The Mayor of Casterbridge, Tales of the Arburnfile, and Judge the Obscure. Renowned for his cynical yet idyllic portrayal of pastoral life in the English countryside. Hardy work pushed back against widespread urbanization that came to symbolize the Victorian age. Victorian drama was scarce and in the 19th century by the dominant form of poetry and fiction. Poetry, particularly lyric poetry, reigned supreme in the first half of the 19th century, while fiction developed in the second half, but the theatres were never deserted. Shakespeare drama were staged and drew crowds at the theatre. The 19th century was an age of great actors rather than of great dramatists. John Philip Campbell and Mr. and Mrs. Siddon Keen, Macready, and Irving were hot favorites with the audience. In drama, farces, musical, burlesque, extravaganza, and comic opera compete with Shakespeare production and serious drama by the likes of James Blunt and Thomas William Robinson. In 1855, the German Red Entertainment began a process of elevating the level of former musical theatre in Britain that culminated in the famous series of comic opera by Gilbert and Sullivan and were followed by the 1819 with the first Edwardian musical comedies.
The first play to achieve 500 consecutive performances was the London comedy Our Boys by H.G. Byron, opening in 1875. Its astonishing new record of 1,362 performances was based in 1892 by Carlos and by Brandon Thomas. After W. H. Gilbert, Oscar Wilde became the leading poet and dramatist of the late Victorian period. Wilde's plays, in particular, stand apart from the many now forgotten plays of Victorian times and have a closer relationship to those of the Edwardian dramatists, such as George Bernard Shaw, whose career began in the 1890s. Wilde's 1895 comic masterpiece, The Importance of Being Earnest, was the greatest of the plays in which he held an ironic mirror to the aristocracy while displaying virtuosic mystery of wit and paradoxical wisdom. It has remained extremely popular. Okay guys, that's all from our group. Thank you for listening our presentation. And the last I say, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.